All right. And there's Jonathan. All right, guys, I think we're getting ready to go live. You're all set? Jonathan is getting ready to join us, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening. I'm Dr. Sabrina Black, and I want to welcome you to the conversation on race with the BMWs. And if you've been watching, you know that the BMWs are Black men of wealth, of wisdom, and of wit. Last week, we had a dynamic conversation. It's really interesting how the call went from 7 to 8:30. But I got to tell you guys, I hung out with you until almost 1 o'clock because I could not stop watching it. They were so engaging and so enlightening. And I was just enamored by everything they had to say. And so I just really just held on to every word. And so if you didn't watch last week, I would encourage you to scroll back through and find it so that you can hear what the BMW said last week. But tonight, as the conversation on race continues, we're going to go a little bit deeper and deeper every week. So I want to invite you to make sure that you continue to tune in. And if you would like to be on the panel, and some of you have already started to email me and call me and say that you do, make sure that you drop me a line and let me know, because next week on the 27th, you too can join us on the panel. We're only going to allow 5 to 6 people in, so make sure you let me know if you want to be one of those individuals. But for those of you who are watching, please tag somebody, share this with somebody, like this, and make comments, and we'll try to provide feedback as we go. But again, welcome to the conversation. Just so you know who we have on panel, I'm going to ask all the guys if you would just quickly say your name. That's all you need to say right now, because we got a lot of stuff we want to talk about. So let's start. Whoever wants to jump in first, just shout out who you are.
This is Von Nickelberry, Northville, Michigan.
Corey Myrick, Dallas, Texas.
BJ Pearson, Detroit, Michigan.
Tamashian, the Visionaire Jones, Detroit. What up, though?
In Black, Witness Protection.
And Ken Black is my son. So don't go looking for him. But as we talk tonight, you know, I was laughing because I thought about some of the things these guys were sharing last week, and it was so much. I actually even made a couple of notes, and I'm going to share some of the notes I made with you about some of the things these guys talked about, because it was just incredible. But the thing I did want to go back to was we talked about the fact that these are not just guys from the hood, but they've been to hoods all over the world. And so I had them send me a list of some of the places that they've been. And I got to tell you, first of all, we have covered all 50 states, plus some continents in between. So let me grab my glasses here so I can read you the list. How about that? So these are some of the places that these guys have been. They've been to Canada, they've been to Mexico, they've been to Brazil, they've been to Costa Rica, to the Dominican Republic, to the Caribbean islands. They've been to France, they've been to the Netherlands, they've been to Germany, they've been to Belgium, they have been to Australia, they've been to New Zealand, they've been to Gambia, they've been to Senegal, they've been to Germany, they've been to Switzerland, they've been to France, they've been to England, they've been to Haiti, they've been to Beijing, they've been to Shanghai, they've been to China, and the list continues. They've been to Puerto Rico, they've been to Egypt, they've been to Ghana, they've been to Mexico and to the Yucatan. These guys have been all over the place. And I gotta tell you, this list does not include the places that I've been. And so between all of us, we've been a lot of places. But you know, as I thought about some of the many places that we've been, some of my favorite places, of course, have always been the places that I've gone in Africa. And so I know that we had people watching last week from a lot of different places. So I want to encourage you, from wherever you are, just kind of put a little tag saying your name and where you're from, so we'll know where you're watching from. But definitely want to give a shout out to all my people from Africa who are watching. So I grabbed my Africa map, and I'm gonna hold that up for you and show it to you. But let me share with you some of the places from Africa that we know people were watching from. From Uganda, from Kenya, from South Africa, from Tanzania, from Liberia, Nigeria, Ghana, Burkina Faso. They were watching from Zambia and Zimbabwe, from Ethiopia, from Cameroon, from Senegal, and from Benin. And so we had people watching from all over the world. And I'm just so thankful for all the people in those different parts of Africa who were watching us. You know, as I thought about Africa, of course, it's hard to think about Africa and not think about slavery, and the fact that we still deal a lot with slavery even now. But as I also think about Africa, it made me think about the point of no return. And I've been to the point of no return in Africa in two different locations, one in Ghana, the other in Tanzania. The point of no return, for those of you who are not aware, is that point in Africa, that place where slaves, and I shouldn't say slaves because they weren't slaves, these were kings and queens, these were dignitaries, these were people of stature who were kidnapped, people who were taken from their homeland and taken to almost a place like a little dungeon where they went through a castle and through the bottom of the pit into a little small doorway. And that doorway was like a point of no return, because once they went through that doorway, there was no coming back. Even as I talk about that now, it's almost like being back in that place. And you could literally smell the stench of slavery. It was almost like you could hear the cries of the people that were there. And to realize that I was standing in a spot that my ancestors stood in, who were kings and queens, who had now become slaves in another land. I'm not the only person who's been to the point of no return. One of those trips, the trip to Ghana, Tamashan was actually with me at that trip as well. So Tamashan, if you could share a little bit about what that trip was like for you in terms of going to the point of no return.
Wow. Way to intro this thing, you know, nice and heavy. So me being a historian myself, I really, you know, was looking forward to seeing, you know, a lot of things in Ghana, especially as it relates to the point of no return. Elmina Castle is where we went to. And I had my camera. I like to document things, take pictures. But as I was, you know, in there and I was looking at the actual chains and shackles that they were using, that they had on display, and I'm looking at all the different visuals, I just started just to get like, not necessarily sick, but like, you know, I was sick with it, you know, and it was just really rough for me to just go through that. Like I didn't even want to take any pictures or any kind of selfies. I didn't want people to take pictures of me while I was in there. I just was like, just seeing, you know, that point of no return, that place where the tour guide, he had said just one thing. He said, you know, this is the door of no return. This is where they go in. And if you look through the door, it led to the ships. It was like right after that, that's where the water was. And then he says, today you are returning. You can turn around and go out here and we can talk. And as I turned around and walked back to the little courtyard lobby, I just broke down crying. And it was like, only thing that was separating me from my ancestors was just a little small space of time, you know. And it was very painful for me to just get a sense of what our ancestors had went through for this period of time. And it was just rough, you know. It was like it's a painful part of history that we should probably experience and get to understand. But it was definitely painful, especially when you have a heart for people and you have a heart for humanity and the way that, you know, how people were treated. It was rough. It was rough.
Yeah, definitely it was rough. And I remember, like I said, we all broke down coming out of there, and we were inconsolable because it was just to think that just man's inhumanity to man, you know, just the cruelty of it, and to consider that people were treated that way. It was really a hard experience. And I remember Tamasha, you know, we both take photos, and I think the pictures that we did took of us going, you know, we had these mug shots like, how dare you, how could you, why would you, did you for real? You know, because it was just hard to really imagine. The only challenge is we know what happened. And we don't talk about it enough. And, you know, and I know people talk about Black history in the month of February, and some people do Kwanzaa in December, but the reality is I'm Black 365 days a year, you know, so I appreciate a month here and a couple of holidays there, but I'm Black more days than that. So if somebody else can kind of chime in about just this whole idea of when we celebrate Black history and this idea and this notion of slavery not being something that we should talk about.
I'll go. I was born and raised in Saginaw, Michigan, and one of the things that I'm very grateful for is the elementary school that I went to. You know, every year we would have what we call a African American Black Arts Festival, Okay. And that was something that we look forward to. But even so, my school was already focused on Black history. I remember in the, just throughout the hallways, they had pictures of Muhammad Ali, Louis Armstrong, Fannie Lou Hamer, just about, who's who in Black history. And so I grew up with that. I grew up singing to lift every voice and sing. So I give a big shout out to my principal and our teachers because they made that part of our growing up as kids from K through 6, that was covered. And so, it's amazing because I'm trying to get my son to that point of understanding. His school doesn't do that, right? They'll wait till February, but I'm trying to get my son to a point of where he can understand colorism in the United States, and where he come from. So I just have to give a big shout out to my elementary school because they did a wonderful job educating us, and that was Morley Jaguars. We won the championship fourth grade, and yeah, we sure did. We won the championship. I was right there in the newspaper. It said money in the bank for Nickelberry. That was me.
Money in the bank for Nickelberry. How about that? You had a lot of great celebrity moments as you was growing up as a child in Saginaw. I mean, your grandfather was the mayor. You had money in the bank. You were the big time basketball player. Yeah, so you had a lot going on even back then, huh?
You know what? I did, but my father had played sports. And so that's what we did. And so, but again, even with all that, just think about this, even with all that, going to see my grandfather, still getting pulled over by the cops saying, "Where are you going?" And, that was a part that I totally blocked out, because it was like normal, but it was humiliating.
Yeah. So somebody else jump in and talk about just the experience of slavery, the slave mentality, growing up being Black.
Yeah, I'll speak on that a little bit too. Please excuse my tardiness. I've had some technical difficulties and still sort of I am right now still, but working through it. But I did have a point of no return experience. There is a point of no return in Senegal, right across from Goree Island. So there was, when you guys talk about that feeling of almost sickness, that feeling as if I was on a trading block. They had several chains that were still left over from those times that they held up, and they showed us how my ancestors were shackled up. And we walked down that hallway, and I have pictures of it as well. It was a very surreal feeling in a very negative way. And I can definitely say that I'm familiar with that feeling. So yes, I believe slavery still has a lot of residue on today's community. One of the funny things that I typically hear a lot is, why can't you just get over what happened in 1865? But we celebrate 1776 every year on the 4th, and so many things that preceded that, because they have a very real effect. And I think that's something to be understood for those who are not Black. There is a stigma, there is a feeling, there is a mood, there is a condition of the mind when you think about once upon a time being sold in slavery and dealing with Jim Crow and Black codes. And it's not so far removed. I'll say this in closing, just to show how it's not that far removed, is that my mother grew up in Alabama for part of her childhood underneath George Wallace as the governor. So my mother had to go to school and write with George Wallace pencils. She had to drink from Black water fountains and had to go to Black bathrooms. That's my mom. So I grew up with that. And Jim Crow and Black clothes were very much so alive at that point. So yeah, to answer those questions, I mean, it has a very real effect on Blacks today. It has a very real effect, and we haven't even touched on the systemic issues, but just on the bare minimum, just how it makes you feel as a Black person. I don't think it's about forgiveness. It's more so about connecting emotionally to the fact that those were your ancestors. Those are our ancestors.
Definitely. Yeah, because you talk about the things that happened in your mom. And when you talked about those chains, Jonathan, it just made me think about even some of the work that I do right now in the area of human trafficking. And again, talking about modern day slavery and looking at the fact that we have these young girls and young boys who are basically taken from their families and sold into slavery. But then I think back to like movies like Harriet, and you see families being literally ripped apart. You know, and I don't know that you can see here that I'm in chains, you know, and you talked about chains and just the thought of somebody being bound by this and having this up around your neck and having this down your legs and down your arms and having your families drugged through the streets and whipped on the back. And I looked at some pictures this week and just the thought of it was sickening, you know, to think that we actually lived through that, our families lived through that.
One of the things that I wanted to share, and recently, one of the things I've definitely tried to do is kind of reclaim our words when we talk about this subject. So I like to stress that these were people that were enslaved. So I just don't like to just say slavery. I just like to talk about the enslavement of specifically African people. And then you brought up an interesting thing talking about its impact on the educational system. So what we've done in America is kind of glaze over the things that have started happening in 1619, when the first African person was brought to this shore for the purpose of enslavement. And so when we get into school and things like that, we gloss over the things that were done to the indigenous people. We gloss over the things that were done to the Asian Americans, because what we want to do is concentrate on the great things that this country has said. And so we gloss over the fact that we had men that did the Declaration of Independence and, you know, the Constitution, and saying all men are created equal. Meanwhile, enslaving people based off of profit or for skin and things like that. So we have to talk about how what enslavement has not only done to us, but what it has done to America. And it's allowed America to lie to its own, because when we're in school, especially at that critical age in elementary, we're really going to be inquiring about questions. We're going to be saying, but why this? So all of us have to get it kind of glazed over. So they will teach us bits and pieces, but not everything. It's a thing that's going on right now that's called the 1619 Project. Very informational, and it's talking about, you know, what happened when those first Africans came over and was enslaved, and then all the residual effects. So we're talking about gerrymandering, we're talking about redlining, Jim Crow, you know, the educational, the prison, you know, the school to prison pipeline, all of those different things, the housing collapse. We got to talk about how racism impacted the housing, the financial markets. You cannot run two different financial systems and, you know, hold one group back and expect it to not impact. So the enslavement and the denial of African Americans to the full access and the bounty that they helped create in America is one of the reasons that we're having the problems. When we have problems in capitalism, it's because capitalism, honestly, not to get off the rant, is a great market. But when you introduce the isms to it, racism, sexism, and all the discriminatory practices that you allow to lead in there, then that's when it actually enslaves all of us. So right now, all of us as Americans are being enslaved by the racist policies that were set by people in 1776 and 1930 and 1965, and even some as recent as 2018. Wow. So that's where we're at.
That's a mouthful. All right. Somebody else want to jump in? Vaughn, you talking about capitalism on there? You want to say something about that, and then we can hear from somebody else?
Well, yeah, I was just saying capitalism is only as good as its people and its leadership. And that's something to keep in mind. If the people are bad, capitalism is going to be bad.
All right. That's one of those kind of Selah moments. All right, BJ, what do you have to say about that? Tell us about your experience growing up and what the education was about. Did you hear about slavery growing up, or was it glossed over? What was your experience? You have to unmute yourself. All right, I got you. Go ahead.
I mean, of course I was growing up through the whole system. I mean, I'm born and raised here in Detroit. I moved around a little bit, you know, went to Houston and a couple other places, but just growing up, dealing with a single mom household, and dealing with, dealing with my father was a really strong guy, and he tried to show me some morals, but when it came to like the educational side of things, my dad really just taught me more about working hard and surviving, more surviving things. He didn't really teach me about the whole educational side of like my ancestors and my history. And my mom, she was too busy working hard as a single mom. So, she didn't get a chance to really like install those values into me, so I really had to find that outside of my family. As big as my family is, none of them are really was really into the whole talking about the history and where we came from. It was really like in the survival mode of where we were at that time and where we're at right now. So I didn't really, start really, getting into it. It like what he said until grade school. And thank God grade school was there for me to kind of like show me and teach me some things about where I came from, our Black history, the whole how we are here today. So I got that knowledge from there. And then after that, of course, I just started going through life dealing with as being an African American person. I mean, dealing with being pulled over and being judged and being picked over jobs and things like that. So, I just kind of learned as I got older, you might want to say, and it didn't take till I started uh, getting different people in my life, and introducing myself to different people, such as you guys, such as you and Kanye and Jose. It's certain people in my life I can say that were really more into our culture, and where we stand and where we've been and where we come from. But then I had other people in my life that was really like, hey, I understand where we're coming from, but we got to get through life the way it is right now, and stay positive and stay away from things that's going to get you caught up, that type of thing. But so it was kind of more or less like, I know what's going on and I knew what was going on throughout life and I knew my past and everything. But listening to you guys right now is more knowledge to me. I mean, I'm continuing to gain knowledge about, my ancestors. I mean, listening to, you guys over there and listening to the door and everything. It's like, it's a culture shock. It's like, wow, and I'm 45, 46 years old. And I'm like, wow, man, if I would have went over there, I probably would have been like, whoa, but it's just more knowledge that as I get older. I never stop learning.
You never
stop
too
learning.
old to learn.
I never stop experiencing. Yeah, I never stop experiencing about life. But thank God I just got, a lot of I surround myself with just not one type of person. I surround myself with people that I can always learn from and I can always show my knowledge to, as well as they show me their knowledge of what their experiences and what they've been going through life. I can show mine as well, and I can give them my experiences of what I go through as well. So,
That's
just being
awesome.
here and listening to you guys is like, it's an honor, because like I said, I'm just still learning. I'm still learning.
You part of the guys though. You part of the guys. You bring a wealth of experience as well, just a different type of experience. And yes, we've been privileged to get a chance to travel throughout the world and to travel throughout Africa, to be at the point of no return, to do some history. But let me tell you, whoever you are that's watching, you can start learning history today, tonight. You don't have to wait for the educational system, and please don't wait for the schools to open in September because they may or may not. You need to start teaching your children about their heritage and about their history. And children who are watching, and teens and young people, millennials, teach your parents. I got to tell you, BJ, you were talking about your mom and your dad and just kind of what they were dealing with and going through, and how, they didn't get a chance to give you that history. But I think about my parents. My parents lived through that time. My parents are both in their 80s now. And so they lived through that whole segregation period, and the black founders, white founders, and all of that. And they don't want to talk about it. Trying to get my dad to have a conversation about his experience growing up is very hard, because his thing is, I lived it. I don't want to live it again. He doesn't want to watch movies about it. He ain't trying to read books about it. It was a very difficult experience. Now, my mom, on the other hand, my mother's in the process of actually writing a book with someone. You know, we did the conversation with African-American women and Jewish women a couple of weeks ago, and my mother connected with one of the ladies on the call, and the two of them are writing a book right now about the experience, because the Jewish lady was saying how she remembered her grandfather had a journal where he kept notes about the people he was trying to help and work with. And so here he is, part of the Underground Railroad, and my mom is saying she can fill in the gaps of the parts of the story he left out. And that's the thing we have to keep in mind, that there are always parts of the story that's being left out. And so as a people, if we don't tell our own story, it may not get told, and it may not get told accurately. And so I'm thankful for people on the line who are historians, who are documentaries, you know, who are visionaries, who capture it through the camera lens, through the video lens, and through the written pen, because there's so many ways we need to tell our story. And so, BG, I'm glad you're with us tonight. We missed you last week, but we're glad you're here tonight, because this is a story that needs to be told, and all of us are part of telling the story. Somebody else jump in and talk about the education you had growing up, about your culture, your history, your heritage, slavery. I see you, Corey.
I guess really what I want to say, and this is.
I see you, but I don't hear you well.
Is this better? Is this better?
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, just listening to what everybody has said, and kind of the thoughts that I had as everyone was speaking, because I've never been to Africa. Now I have, my father has gone, my father and my stepmom family, they've gone, they've told me about it. And I'll say that even growing up, kind of like BJ was just saying, I mean, it's something where you learn about Africa, you learn about slavery, you learn about our historical heroes growing up. But I don't know that everybody necessarily gets the message as strongly or as clearly as everyone else. And so I'll say, even me, I feel like I'm definitely a late learner and a late bloomer, but I do know that things open my eyes to want to learn more when I was a child. And usually it was something that was visual. Movies like, I specifically remember watching a movie like Glory, or watching a movie like Rosewood, and kind of the visuals that are contained in those movies, or even in documentaries, Roots, anything like that. When you see those visuals, it makes you, it sparks interest. And so I guess I say that to say that residue of slavery that kind of has been talked about thus far, you feel that, even though, again, it was hundreds of years ago when it was initiated, but you feel that today, because the Civil War, that's 1865. Jim Crow was another 100 years after that. The Civil Rights Act was 1965. We had a voting right. They had to enact a Voting Rights Act after a Civil Rights Act to let you know what the tenor of the country still was. And this is in the 60s. This is like, my parents are born. Like, so that residue is still there. And then I even think about today, when I watch, like you were just saying, you watch the movie like Harriet, or you can watch the movie 13th, and you can watch 12 Years a Slave and that. But I even think, when I see a commercial for like Ancestry.com, and I'm watching these people, and they're talking about all of these people that they've, their greats from the 1600s and the 1500s. And I just think there are so many of us who will never be able to truly have that true sense of pride. We can guess, we can estimate, we can try to do our best to figure out. But I even think about even just I had a great grandmother who passed a couple of years ago, who lived to 104 years old, or at least we think it was 104 years old, because there was still debate in my family on the year in which she was even born, the day and the years. And that's my great grandmother. So I'm just saying, those kind of things are that residue, those feelings, it can be something as small as a commercial for Ancestry.com, or somebody telling you about how, their ancestry, and then you thinking, man, I'm never gonna have that experience, or it's not even possible. Just stuff like that. It permeates through your life, and it makes you want to read. It makes you want to learn. It makes you want to figure out, okay, what's going on, so that you're able to figure out, okay, how are we going to tackle things in the future? Know where you're coming from, so that you can know where the heck you're going. And so I think that those kind of that slavery residue, although it does have obviously tons of negative connotation, I think that it's also a driving and a motivating force.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really thankful that in our family, we actually have a family historian. So I give a big shout out to Uncle Thomas, and shout out to Aunt Pauline. We actually have a book that's bound, a hardcover book that traces our lineage. back several generations, all the way back to a slave ship almost. And so really thankful for that. I was telling them we need to do an update because we have a generation now of young people that I don't know, because we did the last book about 5 or 6 years ago. And I'm thinking of the number of people who've gotten married since then, the deaths that have occurred since then, the people who've gone away to military since then. And those are things that were being documented in the family history book. And the number of children that have been born since then. And I'm thinking these are kids who need to know their heritage. You need to know. And so definitely we appreciate things like ancestry.com. But I got to tell you, the best history is oral history. Just sitting with your elders. And if you haven't had a chance to do that, I would encourage you, sit with your elders and listen. Don't be in such a rush to get outside or go to your video games or your computer, but go sit with your elders. Just go sit at their feet. And if you're saying, well, we don't have any elders, we don't have anybody 104 in our family, go sit with the 80-year-olds, go sit with the 60-year-olds. Maybe the oldest person in your family might be 40, because some families don't have a long history, but sit with somebody in your family and listen and let them tell you the stories about when. And you pass those stories on. I mean, that's what the book of Deuteronomy talked about in the Bible, about how we pass those stories on from one generation to the next. And we tell the stories about how God delivered us and brought us out and set us free. I mean, and those are stories of praise. And so we want to be able to talk about that because it is to the grace of God that we made it. I mean, that as a people, we're still here, because you got to consider that at every point in history, almost somebody was trying to wipe us out. People were talking about the coronavirus and wondering are people trying to wipe us out, but we're still here. We don't go away. And we are still here because there is a work for us to do. And part of that work for us to do is a work of forgiveness. It is a work of reconciliation. It is a work of helping people understand that we are just one people. Even though we may have different colors, we are one people because God made one race. So somebody else talk about your experience growing up and what it was like and what you learned in terms of history. Who haven't we heard from yet?
Real quick, I just wanted to share something on when you were saying sit, at our elders' feet and listen to them. One of the things I was saying with the younger people we can do as a tool is go on YouTube and start a family channel and get your elders on there and get those stories on there. So not only do we have that oral history, but you can actually have a family channel that you can send your younger generation too. One of the things that I'm very interested in doing is getting, like, for example, my grandfather, my mom and them in the kitchen and having them cook and do things like that and getting it on a YouTube channel for the younger generation to be able to see. And that's something, that, if the way things are going is going to outlive all of us, right? So it's kind of like us doing our time capsule now and things like that. So that's just my humble suggestion.
I'm loving the idea. Yeah. And I think you and Tamashian ought to hook up and do something with that as an idea, because I think people who are watching and listening are thinking, wow, we do need to do that. But as people are going to be doing that, we want to be able to give some instruction to how to do it so it's done well. Because if we're talking about capturing those moments and capturing those histories, I mean, we have somebody who is an award-winning producer here online who can say, okay, here's some things we need to do. So Tamashian and Ken, you guys connect after this and talk about how do we move the nation forward with that as a concept. Somebody else want to jump in and talk about your learning growing up?
Well, go ahead, T. There real quick. One of the things that growing up, when we first learned about Black history, it was, in school, and it was like the same cards and pictures they would put up on the wall and be like, all right, this is Black History Month, learn about these, these groups of people. And I was kind of like, yeah, it's whatever. I wasn't that excited about it until I got, I don't know if I was about 10 or 11, it's like 88, 89. KRS-One came out with this song called You Must Learn. And in this song, he started name dropping all these different people like Madam C.J. Walker and Eli Whitney and Haile Selassie. And I'm like, who are all these people? You know what I'm saying? And what I did was I learned the song and I started doing research and like going to the library, looking up, and I'm like, Johann Blumenbach, like this dude was rapping about Johann Blumenbach and Chamberlain, all these different people that's talking about white supremacy and stuff back then. Like I had no idea that I was like, that one song kind of launched me into the study of African people and, the things that's going on. So I love using like the arts, because that really captured my heart and got me interested into it. Then, Malcolm X movie came out and you know what I'm saying, all these different, you know, it's like a awakening of sorts that really was good for me. And what I try to do now is I try to use movies to educate and entertain people at the same time, you know. And I think it's really good if I can capture some history and make it a way where you can kind of not only digest it but actually be excited to learn about it. I think we can go a long way.
That sounds incredible. And you know, we're a musical people. I mean, all we need to do is hear a beat. You know, get a rhythm going, we get our groove going. And so, you know, anything you put to music, kids will learn. I mean, I think about 2- and 3-year-olds that I hear running around the house singing, and you have to turn and go, what was that? And you realize it's some song they heard on the radio. And I just thought, man, if we could put the Bible to a beat, if we could put Black history to a beat, if we could put our heritage to a beat, that would really help them learn. And, you know, even when I think about that, you know, again, we talk about this slave mentality and just kind of the things that have been passed on, the things that we learned and should have learned and didn't learn. The challenge of education is a big problem because, you know, we talk about this 3rd grade to prison pipeline. And I'm just thinking, man, if teachers and educators and parents would really pay attention to kids' learning styles, pay attention to their personalities, and realize that everybody doesn't learn from a book. You know, some people love lectures and some kids love taking notes, but some children are hands-on. They need to do something. And so people have different styles of learning that we need to tap into, and education needs to tap into. And so what you're talking about, Tamashian, in terms of putting it to a beat, that would be wonderful for educators. So guys, if you can talk about that, this whole idea of this 3rd grade to prison pipeline, what is that?
Well, you know what? One of the things that I think that needs to be addressed, and I don't know if I want to dedicate this to Candace Owens, right, who talks about systemic racism not being.
No, we don't want to dedicate it. We just don't talk about it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about it because you said something. Racism is so inbred in the United States that Black people practice it on one another. Okay. And it's amazing to me when we look at slavery and some of the residue about it. I'm going to ask you guys a couple questions right now. When you were growing up, and if you know, we could talk about the definition of beauty. When you were growing up as a child and you talked about who was beautiful, right? And you looked at a magazine, right? Whether it was Cosmopolitan, Vanity Fair, when you picked that magazine up, what color was the person? The person was white, right? I mean, it is.
But she was bright, light, and almost white if she wasn't. Well, she didn't look like me.
Exactly right. Now people say, well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, it has everything to do with it, right? Because then we go back to the colorism. If you grow up dark skinned, you face it from everybody. You face it from white America. You face it from Black America. And that colorism, you know, I mean, just think about the darker skinned person in our class. Oh my God, that was the person you didn't want to be. And you were Black, right? And so when I look at, you know, we talk about the prisoner pipeline. When that cop gets out, you know, and again, people might disagree with me, right? But I don't think most cops say, I'm going to kill this Black person today, right? But what they do see, if you look at the number of Blacks who've been, that were unarmed, guess what? For the most part, color scheme, they were. You think they were darker skinned? You think they were lighter skinned, right? Now, that's just the judicial system. But if I talked about Alfre Woodard, if I talked about Cicely Tyson, these are some of the best female actresses, not just in Black America, but in America, period. But guess who gets, right, but guess who gets an Oscar? Halle Berry. And so the idea of the things that we struggle with, even the fact that when we start talking about the definition of beauty, we know that attractive people make more money than unattractive people. Well, if I'm dark skinned, you've already proven that I'm not attractive because you said, I mean, if you could find me a dark skinned CEO of a Fortune 500 company, I would be shocked. I didn't say a brown skinned person. I said a darker skinned person. So when we start talking about the residue of slavery, even from an education standpoint, right? Tamir Rice was 12 years old. I mean, and you and I both know darker, you know, first of all, Black young men tend to be older in the eyes of people who don't look like them. And so the person who pulls up to Tamir Rice, guess what? He's a young adult man. And so even from a teaching standpoint, right, when I see darker skinned people in my classroom, I mean, not that I'm just saying if I'm that teacher, right, I have to teach them all without prejudging that saying, oh, this guy is going to be the dumb person. The idea of the, you know, the blue-eyed, brown-eyed thing that Jane Elliott and Anderson Cooper did, man, that still exists today. People say racism isn't taught. No, it isn't.
It is taught.
But the culture, it's so subliminal that people don't even get it. It's so normal. Racism is so normal in American history, and not just in the history of the world. Watch this. So now if I got one of these points when I went to Brazil, and they start talking about how the slaves built the infrastructure in Brazil. And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? But if you look at it, right, South America was a lot closer to Africa than North America. So guess where they landed first, right? And so then you start realizing this wasn't just an American thing. This was a worldwide thing, because now if I'm Mexican, guess I look down on the darker skinned Mexican. If I'm Jewish, I look down on, guess who? The darker skinned Jew. And I hear this, and I'm going to give it back to you guys and let you respond. I don't want to take all the time. Italians, dark skinned Italians have it worse than fair skinned Italians, right? But the idea is what people don't understand. You'll say, well, hey, look, you know what, Vaughn? We're Italian Americans. We were discriminated against. We're Japanese Americans. We were discriminated against. How come Black people keep going back to, and why do Black people keep making this an issue? And I'll tell you why. Because of the Western, and I've been in ministry since 1989, because of what the church taught. It was the church that taught Black people were cursed, and they were cursed with dark skin. That's why if you talk to a Mormon or Joseph Smith, right, that doctrine is so prevalent at the time that in the Mormon doctrine, what they said was Black people were cursed. And when they get to heaven, guess what? They're going to turn white, and that curse is going to drop. So the idea of
all right, ding, 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 ding,
I'm sorry.
ding. Look.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just going to hit you.
He get into
come on back. Look, I was gonna let you roll for a minute. That's a runaway train. All right, somebody jump in and respond to some of the things he said, because you're talking some good talk and a lot of validity to some of the things you're saying. But let's get some people to respond to that. Go ahead, Ken.
So, like, one of the things that he was talking about, saying about how racism is so ingrained that it's like apple pie, even for us as Black people. So one of the phrases that kind of get under my gullet, if you want to say, is when someone calls someone Uncle Tom. And the reason why is because I'm like, have you ever read the book? If you ever read the book, there's no way you would ever call someone, if you're trying to use that as a negative, to call someone an Uncle Tom, because he was not the agitator. He was actually the hero in the book. And if you want to use that book as a reference, call somebody a Sambo, because he was the overseer, the slave that did the master's work. So I'm saying, hey, educate ourselves. But that's the first thing I hear so many Black people talk about. Like right now, we have a Black attorney general that's in Kentucky, and there's a lot of Black people that don't agree with what he's doing or not doing there. And we're hearing everybody online saying, oh, he's an Uncle Tom. And I'm like, no, please, he's a Sambo. He's a Sambo at best. Please don't disrespect Uncle Tom by calling him an Uncle Tom. So it's just, my thing is this. If we're, and I agree with him, the colorism is rampant in our community, but then we just take things that other people say. Because guess what? When we call someone an Uncle Tom, guess what that benefits? White supremacy. Because what it's teaching us, one, every time we say it, a white supremacist can confirm that Black person has not read Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel. That's a confirmation of that. And you're promoting that we want to say the hero is actually the villain, the agitator. Don't ever be an Uncle Tom. Don't save the slave. Don't protect the women and the children, because that's what Uncle Tom did. Correct me if I'm wrong. I might be totally wrong. Maybe I read the wrong, Uncle Tom's Cabinet. But I'm like, I want to be Uncle Tom. I want to be Harriet Tubman. I don't want to be the Sambo. So that's the quick 2 cents I would like to add.
All right, now. All right, now. And for those of you who don't get the Anka's a reference from last week when we talked about the OGs. Tamashian, I saw you over there applauding. Go ahead and jump in. Unmute yourself.
I was applauding because he was right. I mean, I deal with the same thing too. I mean, it's the whole Sambo, and we just run with whatever we hear, you know, and that's why it's good for us to have proper education so we can properly diss people who need to be dissed. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to give them a compliment and diss them thinking you dissed them, you know. So yeah. I think he's on point. And you know, I think like one of the experience that I had and the whole effect that slavery has had on our people is like everybody in the world pretty much I would say like hate us, right? Or hate on us, right? And growing up, I didn't understand that people hated us so much that we began to hate ourselves. And I remember when it first hit me, I mean, a lot of this stuff happened, like, this is my awakening moment. I was like 10, 11, you know, when I started reading this Black history stuff. And I was like, yo, it's cool to be Black. Like, this is dope, right? And I never forget, we went to Cedar Point, and it's my first time at Cedar Point. I'm excited. And it's like a whole bunch of white folks out there having a good old time. And I saw another group of young kids who were Black, and they walked past us and they started mean mugging us, like looking mad, like what you want to do? And I'm like, all these white people out here, you can mean mug. You can't mean mug. You got to mean mug your brother, like, you know what I'm saying? But I had that education where I began to love myself and my people when they were being taught to hate themselves, and then looked at me as if I was the enemy, as if I was the reason why they are in the position that they're in. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. Proper education goes a long way, especially with kids at a young age. If we can begin to embrace ourselves and love ourselves, and when I got me a wife, I tried to find the darkest wife I can find. You know what I'm saying? My beautiful Black queen, Tavia. You know. So anyway, you know. But anyway, that's it. I don't want you to cut me off.
But listen, I'm a get Vine over there, because he jumping weeks ahead of me. Because I'm going to be doing a show on colorism coming up.
I'm sorry.
You're good. That's a good intro for it. I'm going to be doing a show on colorism in the month of August, and really talking about the issue of color, because again, so many people deal with issues of internalized racial oppression. You know, this whole light skin, dark skin has been an issue for a long time. You know, even as we talk about just these issues of light skin, dark skin, you know, I'm thinking about, you know, I posted a couple of weeks ago about nicknames growing up. And you know, and I know we've all been called some names at different points, and some of the names we liked and some of them we didn't like. And I know one of the names that I was called when I was growing up, and again, first let me back up. So family, I'm the oldest of 4. I have a younger sister and 2 brothers in the middle. We were known as Beanie, Bug, Baki, and Bunny. Now that sounds cute, you know, and I hate nicknames now sometimes. It's like when you call a child by their name, because names have significance. You know, my father named me Sabrina. I was named after German Airlines Sabrina, because my father said when I was born, I looked like somebody who would soar the heights. So thank you, Daddy, for that. But somebody else said when I was born, I looked like a little black beanbag, because I was this little chubby baby. And I was darker than anything they had ever seen. And so they really did mean the color black, not just a dark skin brown, but they meant a little black beanbag. So my nickname went from being little black beanbag. And can you imagine being called that from birth to like 5 years old? Little black beanbag. Come here, little black beanbag. Come here, little black beanbag. Oh, come here, you so cute, little black beanbag. Then it went from little black beanbag to black beanbag, then to black beanie bag, all the way down to the derivative of beanie. And so now I do not respond to Beanie. And I got aunts who still want to see me at family years ago. Is that beanbag over there? And I will not turn around. And then somebody say, well, you know, she go by Dr. Black now. And it's like, no, you can call me Sabrina. You can call me Bree, but I am no longer little black beanbag. Yeah, and so those names, Yeah, even though somebody may think they're cute, when you learn those names are not cute, quit calling those babies Chubby, Pookie, Boo Boo. That's not gonna be cute when they grow up. So talk some, guys, if you would, about the names you've been called, whether they were nicknames or other names, because all those names are not good names.
I like my nickname. It was Big Daddy.
It was that?
Maybe that's what I wanted it to be, but you still call me Big Daddy. Everybody out there call me Big Daddy.
Look, that was last week's conversation. Look, we talked about Big Daddy and the big homies and the OGs. But you got to know, we talked about the OGs last week. It was a different take, so you definitely have to go back and watch the video. But we talked about the OGs from the standpoint of flipping the script. And those becoming the guys who were teaching good principles, not how to hustle on the street and take advantage of people, but the older men mentoring the younger men and raising them up in the fear and admonition of the Lord, teaching them about life and teaching them how to navigate life and how to do it as a man of character and integrity. And so if you're going to be an old guy, OG, if you're going to be that dude, you got to make sure you're teaching the right principles. So somebody else, nicknames that you had.
So I'm going to do this just because I love you, Dr. Black. I'm gonna go ahead and put this on your Zoom and live. My nickname from middle school was Braxton. Everybody called me Braxton. Now the reason why they called me Braxton was because of a show,
John Singleton
show, and the guy on there was Braxton. Now, see, the reason why they called me that was because you can kind of hear my voice. I'm a little bit nasally. I used to pronounce all of my words. And I went to school on the east side. I went to Detroit Public Schools on the east side. So the first thing I would get when I walked in is like, man, where are you from? Like you from the city, you from the suburbs? But my mom used to always make us speak properly. I couldn't say I run somewhere, I'm going. What you mean I'm going? She used to always correct.
You couldn't be fixing to do nothing?
What you doing? I couldn't say doing nothing. It wasn't no nothing, in the house. So she used to correct us with that, and when I would come around other kids my age and talk, they're like, man, and not only that, she used to make sure I stayed creased up. She would take the starch and crease my sleeves and everything like that. So I had the Dockers on. I had on some Rockports. So,
I'm loving the mama.
Yeah, she meant well. I still thank God for it. But when kids saw that, they're like, no, you Braxton. So that's what they called me growing up. So it kind of has something to say. I know we'll deal with some of the isms within the Black community later. So it was one thing, and kind of like second in Tamashian's, I think beauty comes in all shades and colors. But when it came time for me to choose a bride, I found me a chocolate sister. So my wife is chocolate as well. But I said beauty comes in all shades, and she had the right heart. But besides that, there is a lot of just like its color. Differences. You can not only be teased by your complexion, right? But if you Black and you can't dance, if you
what
talk.
You mean you can't dance? You ain't got no rhythm. You ain't got a beat.
Well, I do.
That's the stereotype. Every Black person got rhythm.
Right. That's a stereotype. And all Black people can jump, and all of these different, all Black people are athletic. If you're tall, you play basketball, and all of these different things. So when you don't have a certain quote unquote skill set, or if you, in my case, talk too proper and you don't have enough swag or slang in your voice, then, I was white boy. That was another thing I was called too, white boy. You can never get under my skin. I would always laugh at myself. I was a firm believer of, you take yourself too seriously, you become everything you never wanted to be. That's something I heard early on. So
repeat that again. Repeat that.
If you take yourself too seriously, you'll become everything you never wanted to be. Or shorten that out, you take yourself too seriously. Don't take yourself too seriously, because nobody else does anyway.
As my husband says, don't believe the hype.
Don't believe the hype. Yeah. So that was my childhood nickname. And just because I love you, I'm gonna go ahead. I went on and put that out there.
I appreciate it, Braxton.
Wow.
Well, listen, but you were called Braxton, but we actually have a Beckwith on the line. We have a Cornelius on the line, and I'm sure they got a little pushback too. I see you open up Beckwith.
I got called everything from backwards, Butterfingers, bitch witch. I mean, anything with a B and a W. Becky was like like my cousins used to call me Becky, and I was so mad at it. Like, hey Becky, come over here and play with us. I'm like,
Go ahead.
so when I realized I had a B and a J because I am a junior, I came up with BJ. But you know, then I got backlash with that. You know, I was BJ, and then the kids killed me with that. You know, but it was better than Beckwith. But then as I got an adult, I really appreciated my name. I'm like, Beckwith is a nice, strong name. So I started trying to go back to Beckwith, and obviously my people was like, nah, man, we not calling you Beckwith, you BJ. You know, you're gonna be BJ forever. You know, but yeah, you know, when you have those unique names, you know, kids don't have no filter, so they'll call you kind of whatever they want to call you, and you just deal with it. Like my man said, you know, you don't take it seriously. You just laugh with it and keep it going.
You know, one of the things we talked about again last week, BJ, is that if BJ applied for a job, he may or may not get it. But if Beckwith applied for a job, definitely gonna get the call back and the interview. Just like Ken may not, but Ken would though.
I got several interviews, and when I got to the interview, it was a whole different conversation. So you know, because it was like, you know, more on the computer and my resume and everything. Never a phone call, because if I got on the phone, they would have heard my voice. You know, but I've gotten to some interviews, and I could tell the whole conversation turned totally differently, you know, once I got there. But I rise over it and kept it going, and you know, I'm here today.
And still we rise, and we have to. Yeah. Somebody else want to chime in about their nickname or their name growing up?
Yeah. You know what? My nickname was Bullhead. My family nickname was Bullhead because I was so stubborn, right? You know, you go fishing, how hard it is to get a bullhead off of the line, right? So it was, come here, Bullhead, right? I was just kind of one of those kids who just did what he did. And my friend's nickname was Foots, right? Because I had these big old shoes, right? Like size 15. And I remember in elementary school, right? They was like, hey, my coach, Robert Johnson, was like, hey, your feet are big. Because when I was 9 years old, my shoe size was 9. When I was 10, it was 10. So it was Bullhead from a family standpoint. And then from a team and a elementary school, there's like, hey, Foots, come here. And they would tease me like, hey, we see we see his feet before we see him. So that's what it was.
See, they didn't know at that time that you were destined to lead with those feet and think with that bullhead.
Oh, that's so funny.
Well, you know, one of the things that we learned to do, though, is that we learn to spin things and to reframe things. And we have to just to survive, because you get called so many different things and people slight you so often that if you don't find humor in it, if you don't figure out how to process it and deal with it, it will wipe you out and take you under. So you do have to learn how to reframe. All right, last person. Anybody else want to share something about their name or their nickname?
Yeah, I can
yes,
share.
Oh, go ahead.
So I had a regular family name. It wasn't like it was anything crazy, but we did have, like, you know, people in our family named Boo and Pooh and Pee Wee and, you know, little names like that. And I remember one time I was talking to my cousin, you know, his name is Boo, and I was like, I don't feel comfortable calling you Boo now no more. You know what I'm saying? Like I need to call you by your name. You know, like at a certain time, we got to understand, like, certain names are cute when you're kids, but as you grow up, sometimes you need to grow out of these names and take a new identity, so to speak. And so a lot of that had to do with how I would see things. Even when I got a job, because even when I was out of college, I felt that I wasn't getting their interviews. And one time I changed my name to Tim Jones instead of Tamashian. And the dean found out what I was doing, and they was like, this resume looks pretty impressive. You know, I'm like, hey, all I did was change my name to Tim, you know. And I never and people always try to cut off my name and just call me Tim, and I never let them call me Tim. You know, like, you know, can I call you Tim for short? No, call me Tamashian. And I'm kind of firm with that, because that's my name, and people want to shorten it or call you what they want to call you. And I'm like, no, I want you to call me what I want to be called, which is my name. And I literally had to go, like, when I first got a job as a supervisor, everybody was butchering my name. I was like, all right, y'all just call me TJ. Then I got promoted, and it was like, yo, y'all can't call me TJ no more. Call me Tamashian. And so I go into engineering meetings, and executives come in, and it's like, no, I'm not TJ, I'm Tamashian, you know. And I held on to that because people respect people who respect themselves. And I'm like, yo, like, that's my name. Like, call me that. And if
Absolutely.
you can say Tom Janovich and all these different names, you know what I'm saying? You can say
Mhm.
Sebastian. If you're not, mess it up. I'm okay with you messing it up. At least you're giving the effort. But don't
Yes.
cut it off and I'm gonna just call you Tim. No, it's like calling Dr. Black Bean. Like, no, I'm not going to respond.
No, we will not be doing that.
Right, no. So,
But you know, it's interesting to Mashian, even as you say that, it makes me think so much about being in Africa with our family and friends there, because, you know, they have names that we feel like are difficult to pronounce. And so they have what they've taken on as Christian names. And so they'll have a name that's easy for us to say as opposed to what their actual name might be. And I think it's really important that we learn how to pronounce people's names, because names are significant. Names have value. And when parents are naming their children, a lot of times they're specific about why they're calling that child what they're calling them. It has a meaning to them. Now, granted, some parents was just somewhere smoking and getting high, drinking something, and just didn't know what to say, and they slipped and said something, and they spelled it with an X because they wasn't thinking right and whatever. But most names have significance. And I would say, even if you're watching now and you don't know what your name means, look it up. And if you can't find nothing, make it up. You determine what you want your name to mean. So when people say your name, you hear them calling you by your destiny. So when people say Sabrina, I hear somebody that's gonna soar the heights. I hear I'm going places. I hear the sky is the limit. So call my name. So call me Sabrina. So when I hear that, I smile. I'm thinking, yep, I'm going places. And I'm willing to take every last one of you with me because I'm going some places. All right. So as we talk about these names, again, want to switch gears here and talk about this whole idea of whether you're Tamashian in the boardroom and then TJ amongst the peers before you get promoted, or whether you're Beckwith on the resume and then BJ when they get to know you, or if you're Ken or you're Kenya or whoever you might be. Talk about this idea of trying to get a job being Black, and the opportunities that you may have missed because you were Black, or what happened once you got to the interview once you were Black. And why don't you go ahead and go in, Cornelia, because I heard you trying to talk about your name. So if you want to start with your name and then go from there.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, this ties into that, but my name, I've always been known as Corey. My mom's called me, my whole family, everybody calls me Corey. Now, my name is Cornelius Myrick III. I'm actually named after my dad, and he was named after his dad. But and just thinking about, I know that even last week we were kind of talking about, I know Ken was even talking about like changing your name from Ken, change your name on your resume to Ken Black. Changing my name from Cornelius Myrick on the resume to Corey Myrick, it does make a difference. And I'll be honest, that's something that I even struggled with earlier on, as far as, okay, so now should I go ahead and put Cornelius on there, or should I put Corey on there? And then when they meet me, now I can show them exactly who I am, because I am more than just my name. But then you also think, just like you said, there's so much importance in the name, especially when you're named after someone. Like I said, I'm named after my father. So that should be something that, you know, that you feel a strong sense of pride in, and you shouldn't want to take that off of a resume or take it off of anything. But again, the society that we live in, it makes you feel, if nothing else, that maybe it would be best if I change my name or put Corey on here, or put Tim on here, or put Ken on here, as opposed to just being who you are, letting your worth and your experience and your, you know, all of those things, letting those come out when they meet you in an interview. And then I even think about just in the corporate world, and I'm the type of person who I try my best not to. I want to always be sure that I'm not accused of playing a Black card or a race card or anything like that. So if I'm going to say something is racial, I'm going to confirm this is racial. But I look at, like, even the places that I've worked, I look at my colleagues, the people who I've worked with, I look at their credentials, their resumes, kind of what they've done as far as education, work experience, all of those things. And then I look at where I'm at, and a lot of times there's a disparity. There's a difference. People who I work with who are my same hue or my same skin color, generally they have a degree and they have some job experience, and they have more than just a few years of work experience. And I'll say the people that are not of my hue, a lot of them didn't go to college, or if they did, they didn't graduate, or, you know, and even me, and this is not to be braggadocious, but I graduated magna cum laude. I don't think there are probably too many people who I work with that are my level who graduated magna cum laude that have the type of experience that I have. So I'm just saying those type of things. But when you look at just the name, if you see the name Cornelius Myrick, perhaps you won't know, or you won't give that a complete chance, as opposed to maybe someone named Chris or Corey or something else. So that's just something that I've had to navigate and deal with from a very young age all the way up through now.
I appreciate what you're saying, Corey, in terms of the fact that a lot of people who get jobs and get promotions don't even have the qualifications you have or the experience or the skill level you have, yet they get promoted because of the color of their skin. And sometimes they get promoted because of who they know. And you got to realize a lot of times things are relational. And when we segregate ourselves and when we don't blend in, or not necessarily blend in, but when we don't try to connect with other people, they don't get to know us and they don't get a chance to hear how wonderful we are or how amazing we are, or to hear where you graduated from or how you graduated. They think you just made it past and got in because of some race card. And we don't play the race card. I am Black. I can never pretend to be anything other than what I am. And so I always have to just go in based on merit and the fact that somebody opened the door. I know a lot of times, in these conversations we've been having, people have been asking me, well, what can we do different? What can we do to help? And one of the things is to realize is that when we talk about white privilege, it's not a bad thing. It's just the privilege that you have because of the color of your skin. And if you have that privilege, then open the door for somebody who hasn't had that privilege. But also, Corey, like you say, education sometimes provides that privilege. And based on the education that you had, you can open the door for somebody else. But I think all of us have a responsibility to open the door for whoever we can. But one of the things I learned from a mentor of mine, Matt Parker, he says that when somebody opens the door for you, grab somebody by the hand and take them with you. Never go behind the door by yourself for a couple of reasons. One, because sometimes you get there behind the door by yourself, people will deny what they told you. So you need a witness. The second thing is you are not the only Black person that got skills and abilities and who can talk in complete sentences, Jonathan. And so you need to take another brother who can talk in complete sentences. And so we need to realize that God showed favor on us and he opened the door for us to get in to do what we do. But we got to take some folks with us because there's some other amazing people out there as well. Somebody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I wanted to share, and I'm gonna segue into like the job. So it started with the name. So my legal name is Kenye, and I have exactly. If I say my full name, it's very ethnic, right? So it's Kenye Jose Black, right? So when you hear that, you're like, what is this guy? I don't know what he is, but he's a hodgepodge of America. So everything to me was kind of great until this guy named Alex Haley came out with this little movie called Roots, and it came out in the early 70s, and I went to school in the early 70s, and it was a little character called Kunta Kinte. And so when that came out after the first night, I was instantly Kunta Kinte for the rest of elementary school. Hey, that's Kunta Kinte. Hey, Toby, you know what I'm saying? So it was.
I'm sorry, Kenya.
It was instantly, things like that. And then, my father went by Jose. And so then I have a whole questioning behind that thing as well, because my grandmother was, biracial and she was able to pass for white. So did she call my father Jose as a protection for him? Because, hey, if I can pass for white and I call my child Jose and a Diane, which sounds like another, maybe my kids can get by certain situations, right? But that's a whole nother thing. So it starts early, with our own people, like saying, hey, look, something is different about you and your name. But I never had an issue because, hey, I went to school in Detroit and most of us had pretty unique names. Like I say, when I met a Beckwith, I looked at him and, he's him like, hey, that sounds like you can get a job with that. You know what I'm saying? Kenye, not so much. But then after I went to college and I started submitting those resumes, and I'm seeing Kenye, regardless, my education and like you're saying, everything that I've done, I should be further along than what I am. But I know because of, different prejudice that other people, what they perceive, has limited me from opportunities. And in order for me to get those opportunities, I mean, Mom, when I first came out of school, I'm full of vigor. I grew dreadlocks because you know what? I'm like, I know so much about business. You shouldn't care about my hair. So I was Kenye with dreadlocks. Kanye with dreadlocks was not working nowhere near a Fortune 500 company. Then, you know, I went away. It was like, okay, let me cut off the dreadlocks. Cut off the dreadlocks. Pay started to get a little bit better. I'm like, let me kind of go by Ken. Man, when you cut off the dreadlocks and go by Ken, I have to say the pay is like it's totally different. Totally different. And I'm like, well, what did I do different? What did I do different? And my dad said, he said, you know, you cut off those locks and, you know, you start going by Ken, you know, people start opening up doors where they were just willing to listen to me. Not that I was anything, nothing on my resume has changed. It's just gotten stronger. But Ken without locks that looks non-threatening, that plays golf, you know what I'm saying, can talk about his handicap, you know, and all of those type of things, and can come in with the Brooks Brothers suit on. Hey, and can learn to, you know, can speak in complete sentence when it's necessary. Yeah, that's who they love. That's who they want. That's, you know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Even now, when you think about the whole situation with COVID-19 and coronavirus and everybody sheltering in, I'm noticing more guys who've grown beards and folks are letting their hair grow long. And, you know, and even my hair, I've stopped pressing and curling my hair. And so I think people are becoming a little bit more ethnic just because they're not getting to the beauty shop and they're not spending the money. And it's kind of like, you know what, this is who I am, you know, love it or leave it. And so I'm really hoping that when all this is over, we don't go back to the lightening and the whitening of America in the Black community. You know, that people really will begin to embrace the locks, embrace the dreads, embrace the natural hair, embrace their ethnic names. And even if you don't talk in complete sentences, you talk so you can be understood. I mean, there is a way to talk depending on where you are. I mean, so even last week when you guys were talking about the OGs, you know, I have clients, you know, who live that life. You know, and so when they were watching the show, they were like, yeah, I'm so glad to know you down with us, you know. And I'm just thinking, okay, I'm down with you. You know, I think about Tamasha when he started up, the first thing he says, yeah, what up, though? You know, we got kids in Africa, you know, doing peace out. I'm like, what you know, what's that about? But we're teaching them about the fact that culture and heritage is not just about talking in complete sentences. Yes, we're educated. Yes, we have degrees. Yes, we have real jobs, but we real people too. I mean, and so I notice sometimes when I'm with other cultures, when they get together, they kick back and laugh and say all kind of stuff, and it's okay. But when we do it, we too Black. I don't know if I'll ever be too Black, especially now that I've been to Africa, because I realized in Africa, I'm actually brown scared. I was so disappointed. I'm like, I used to be the Blackest person in the room every place I went. Then I get to Africa and discover that you can be creamy Black, deep, dark, black, blue, midnight Black, and I'm just brown skin, even though I'm Black. Somebody else want to jump in?
Y'all chime in and say a word about that too. So my name on the resume, I was smooth. Honestly, it was when I showed up, kind of like what Beckwith said. 2008 was the year. That was the year where the crash happened. I found myself jobless, and I found myself jobless particularly because of my ethnicity. And it was told to me by someone who was in the human resource department. I won't name the company, but it is a nationwide company. I was told that I was going to be let go, and several other people who had a certain ethnicity, not just Blacks, some Hispanic as well, were being let go because the face of that company was trying to appeal to a different market. I got a review on a Tuesday saying that I was doing excellent and I was doing wonderful, and I was congratulated for my job. And 2 days after that, on a Thursday, I was called back into that same office, and I was told things aren't working out. And you did sign a at-will notice when you got hired into this company. So is there anything on your desk you need to grab? And we need you to take the back door. We don't want to start any commotion or anything like that. So I found myself jobless. Now I'm having to reapply for jobs. I applied for another job that's a pretty well known company. The interview went great. I thought I was in. I thought I was going to have a job that was going to pay me salary and fly me in and out of the country and all of those different things. And I realized that there was a little bit of, I guess you can say, bias there as well. Also in that year, I found myself getting stopped by the police and grabbed out of the car, taken to jail. I mean, I never sold drugs. I didn't do anything like that. So 2008 was just a huge blow up in the face in terms of my skin color, getting me, one, out of a job, two, not in another job, not being able to get into a new job, and three, I mean, I'm being thrown into the back of a cop car, and it was in Farmington Hills, and I'm asking officers, what did I do wrong? Well, you got an obstruction of vision in your mirror, so if you need a reason, there's your reason. So they pretty much told me we don't have a reason, and of course there was hands put on me, guns drawn, and I was cooperative. So that was a very pivotal moment. So what I'll say to that is this, and I think Beckwith said something about it as well with his upbringing, is that his family, they just pretty much said, hey, we just need to survive, regardless to what the system is leaning or tilting to, we just need to survive. And I came from a blue collar family that taught us the same thing. And just like we know Martin Luther King and Malcolm X had different ways of thinking, if we go back further than that, with people like W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, we celebrate them all during Black History Month, but they had different ideologies about how Black people were to win. I believe that a lot of us, including probably a lot of my family, adopted maybe the Booker T. Washington view. Whereas maybe Marcus Garvey would say, don't try to assimilate into the system and prove to them that, you can be a part of their system, build your own system. Whereas the people who were more like Booker T was just saying, hey, if we show them that we're just as smart, just as bright, can speak just as well, can dress just as nice, then they'll graft us into their system. And I believe that most of us were probably taught that, hey, as long as you present yourself right, you'll be able to get a job. So that being said, I believe that for a good part of my my life, while I did sort of have that mentality that I probably need to assimilate, I probably need to talk a certain way, I still had a mother that trained me, sort of like I heard Dr. Martin Luther King's parents taught him. They said, look, this is the times you live in, but you have just as much worth as everybody else. So when I show with my Dockers on at a job interview with a collar shirt on, what I would see is that I did get received well. I did get received, because of my name, Jonathan Huff. It could be a white guy's name, and the last name is German. So, and when I show up, I'm, hey buddy, how's it going? And I'm talking like that, right? So, but what that also did is, and I don't want to hog it, but what that also did was, because people saw that, they felt that I was committed to the life of assimilation, or they felt that I was trying to be, as some people would say, the white man's Negro. What they didn't know is that I was woke, and I was somebody who had been, to jail, locked up a couple of times, just DWB, driving while black. So what I would hear is, and I even heard this question asked to me by a coworker less than a year and a half ago. Coworker asked me this. He said, John, I just got to ask you, because I think you would understand me a little bit better. He goes, why is it that Black people are so entitled? And I said, I wonder why you asked me that question. What makes you think Black people are entitled? So we were able to he was comfortable enough. I won't get into the details, it's pretty long to kind of break down that conversation. But the point that I'm making is he felt comfortable enough, to ask me that question, just because of maybe the way that I speak. So that's sort of been my experience. And I think that those different ideologies that I express, I think that some of us all kind of fall in one or the other, or maybe a little bit of both. But that's just how I kind of I'm able to understand the world around me on a professional level. And
John, I think at some point we were taught to be invisible, to not make waves, don't make noise, don't cause trouble. Then we realized that we couldn't hide in plain sight, and people saw us, and then it became OU, whatever they were calling us, whether it was calling you Negro, nigga, Negro, boy, tar baby, black girl, black boy, whatever they were calling you, it wasn't pleasing and it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't nice. So you went that route to, oh, you just trying to be white, or you trying to sound white, or you're trying to act white. And my thing is, again, I'm too dark to act anything other than I am. I can't blend in if I tried. But what I did learn how to do was how to be respectful, how to honor people, and how to carry myself with dignity. I learned how to stand up for myself and to not be walked over. And I think it's important that as we are working with our children and as we're helping them to navigate this society, we have to teach them about who they are and the value of who they are and the significance of who they are and just how amazing they are. And again, I don't think we spend enough time teaching our children that. And so we got to stop calling our children the bad names and the names that the world is calling them and calling them outside of their names. We got to stop telling them that they're no good and they won't amount to anything, because they can amount to any and everything they put their mind to and that they work towards and that they study for. And so we need to re-educate not only our children, but we need to re-educate ourselves sometimes. I mean, because I know a lot of people who are my age, and you guys know I'm a decade or so older than you guys. I know people my age who are still struggling with a slave mentality. We are no longer slaves. We've come out of slavery, but they still feel like they're in chains. They still feel like, they're bound. And even though I'm trying to tell them that, freedom has come, they still feel like they're in chains. And we know that Juneteenth represented the fact that people had been set free and a lot of folks didn't get the message. And still now, some people have not gotten the message. And that's part of what we're here to do, to talk about this whole issue of racism and colorism in America. So last thing is we got to wrap up. Our time is running short, but I got to tell you guys this. I looked at the flyer for the conversation on race. And the first thing I noticed was, who are all these light-skinned brothers? And I thought, BJ, woo, bring some color to the party.
I was gonna say the same thing. I was like, I'm the darkest fella brother up on this boy.
So I was really glad to see, because I was putting the pictures and I'm thinking, how did I end up with a panel full of light-skinned guys? I said, now you talk about colorism.
We was talking about that previously, and back in those days, the light-skinned brothers always had the most popularity. Us black chocolate we was like last on the list for the girls and everything else. But
but you notice
dark-skinned people coming back now. Huh?
You notice where you placed on the flyer. You're not at the end. You need
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
But I did also hear you guys saying that you had dark wives, that you went found you a chocolate girl. And I know everybody didn't, but that's a conversation yet to come. Because sisters got issue with the fact that some of you went dark chocolate, some of you went white chocolate, but then some of you went white and other colors. And again, if we're saying we all one people and the color of the skin don't matter, why do people have such issues with that? And and we're gonna come back and time. I know Brian got something to say about that. We're gonna get to that next week, Brian.
Be ready.
I'm chocolate, by the way. I just want to put that out there.
Chocolate.
you chocolate.
You chocolate. And y'all just
you caramel, brother. You caramel, brother.
Because I'm working on a project now. Shout out to Denise. And it's the project we started working on over 18 years ago. We started working on a project called Chocolate Girls. And since that time, we've changed it to Assorted Chocolates, because we had so many light-skinned girls who wanted to be part of the project too. And so we're going to do a book called Assorted Chocolates, talking about the issues of colorism in America amongst African-American women. And so all of your wives, whatever colors they might be, are also your girlfriends and your friends, your mamas, your daughters are invited to participate if they would like to also write a chapter in the book. But we're going to talk about that whole issue of color in days to come. Von, where's my mask that you had?
I had to leave it. I had to leave it outside. My computer, it was my battery was dying out and I had to run down. I do apologize.
Not a problem, not a problem. So, so some of you are noticing that we're sporting our African attire tonight. And we did want to give a nod out, Von in his Black Panther shirt and Beckwith in his Black Detroit We Hustle Hard shirt and Corey in his HBCU shirt. But we're representing on tonight. We're representing not only the color of our skin, but the color of our culture and the things of our culture. Because again, African-American people have a lot to be proud about. You know, and it's not just about the cloth. It's not just about the clothes. Even though I know people are always saying, Dr. Black, where can I get an outfit like yours? And you got to know, at some point I used to do a sale called The Shirt Off My Back, and I would literally sell my clothes. And I may go back to that at some point, but I was always doing that to help raise money for missions to get a chance to go back. You know, as a global humanitarian, my goal is always to be able to give back and to help somebody else. And I'm so thankful that even in this season, we get to help right here at home, and we get a chance to help share a message that we pray is really making a difference for you and the people that you know, just about racism in America and what it's like to be a Black man in America and the impact of the things that they've had to deal with on just mentality, psychologically, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and on health. You know, so we're going to talk about some of those disparities in days to come. I mentioned that next week on the 27th, if you've been watching and you say, hey, I want to be a part of the panel, next week is your opportunity to be a part of the panel. So I got to tell you, you know, I have so many thoughts, and I know I'm going to spend the rest of the night with you guys watching the video over and over again. And but one of the things I had thought about, even as I was thinking about tonight and wearing African attire, I had also thought about maybe putting on Black hoods. But I got to tell you, I went away from that because I thought, you know what, me and Beck with the too dark to be on the Black hooded jacket, we going to blend in. But I want to all show up and have on Black hoodies, you know, and then unzip and have something bright and colorful inside. But I thought, skip that. We got enough bad hoodie stuff. And even as we close it, I want to talk about that because, again, you know, I know you guys really have it hard sometimes just being Black men. And as a Black woman, I don't have to deal with all the things that you have to go through, but I do deal with the Black experience as well. And one of the experiences that I had, and this was visiting one of my Jewish American friends, I was out in Farmington coming home late at night in the middle of the winter. And you guys know I drive an old cop car, you know, me and my Crown Vic, and it stalled out on me and it was sliding back down the slope coming out of the Farmington Hills. And I had this big old black Parker on that has a hood on it. And I'm sitting there in my hood and my black Parker. And I realized my car is stuck. And all of a sudden, I felt the experience of driving while Black. And I thought, oh my God, this is not the place to be in the middle of the night on a side street. I'm not even on a main street. I'm on a side street in the neighborhood in a black car with a black hooded coat on. And I saw the police lights flashing. And the first thing I did was I threw my hands up like, don't shoot me, don't shoot me. And I thought, why would I have to think that? Or even go through that experience. And so I let my window down immediately and I took my hood off and I put my hands up saying like, help, help, help. He got out of his car, walked down the slope and says, ma'am, are you okay? And I just thought, thank God, a nice cop. You know, and so I didn't get harassed or anything. You know, he had me get out and go to the other side. He got my car up the slope. But then it was interesting because as he got me up to the top of the mountain, he says, do you need any more help? Are you okay? I said, I'm fine. He goes, do you need me to show you how to get out of here? And I just thought, clearly I'm not where I'm supposed to be in the evening on a snowy night. But I said, nope, I know my way home. Thank you. And I drove myself back to Detroit. You know, and so it is important that you know where you're going to be and that somebody else knows where you're going to be. And so for my young brothers and sisters who are watching, if your mama says, call me when you get there, it's because we want to know you made it there safely. And we say, call me when you get home, it's because we want to know you made it back alive. So brothers and sisters, stay alive. See you guys next week. Make sure to tune back in next Monday, 7 o'clock as the conversation continues. Conversation on race with the BMWs. Black men of wealth, wisdom, and wit. Take care. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, you guys enjoy. Bye-bye.
Grace and peace. Love y'all.
Thanks, guys. Good stuff, BJ.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Thank you. Thank you. I will be on tuning in next week.
All right. Thanks so much, yeah. Make sure you hook up with Ken.